We're starting our soap today with some rose clay. Here I'm just adding some of my base oils to that rose clay and mixing it up into a really smooth mixture. Some soap makers like to do this a day ahead of time or overnight. I think if you can just do it like a half an hour before you mix it into your soap batter, you're good to go. Essentially what we're doing here is rehydrating the clay, and this prevents it from causing acceleration or being difficult to mix into our soap batter. Next, we're going to move on to blending our soap batter up. These are my base oils. This comes from my standard soap recipe, which you can get on my website. And I'm just going to very gently drip in our lye solution, and then I'm going to blend to emulsion. I like to blend it only to emulsion and not to light trace because I want to have as much playtime as possible when it comes to design. Next, I'm pouring my soap batter into 2 equal portions. One portion is going to get that rose clay, and the other portion is going to remain uncolored. Now, some of you may remember that I'm rebooting a bunch of soaps from 2021, and this is actually the only soap that I'll be rebooting from 2020, because I started my soap making journey on December 27th of 2020, and I made the original version of this bar. The original was just a simple rose clay bar scented with a fragrance from Nature's Garden called Down Home Country, and it smelled like cedar and clove. It was a solid color. And now that I've been making soap for a little while, I wanted to revisit it and see what other design I could create. So I decided this time I would go with an in the pot swirl. And what that means is we're going to be adding all of our colors into the same pot and then pouring it into the mold and creating an organic swirl, something that's created by the pouring motion and the churning of the soap batter. Here I am blending it a little bit more to make sure that the rose clay has fully blended into the batter, and also to bring it to a slightly thicker trace, because in the pot swirls work better and look better when you have it at a light trace or a medium trace as opposed to at emulsion. Just like its predecessor, this batter is going to be fragranced with Down Home Country from Nature's Garden, and it's a blend of cedar and clove and lots of warm spices that we love here in this household. Now that everything is fully mixed, I'm adding everything back into the same pot, and I'm going to pour it in a couple of different places. This allows it to not just be a singular glob of one color in the pot. And you can even take your spatula and mix it a little bit if you want, or I've even seen soap makers spin the pot that you have all of your soap batter in order to mix the soap batter around in the pot. Now we start pouring it into the mold, and you have a couple of options here. Actually, you've got basically an infinite number of options. You can pour it however you'd like. Some people like to pour it in one spot and allow the soap to kind of spread out. You can also pour it back and forth like I'm doing, and that creates sort of a cup-shaped design when you get the final cut of the bar, because you're pouring the batter into itself over and over again in the center of the mold. It's completely up to you. You can zigzag it here and there. Really just have fun and play with it. A couple of quick taps to remove some air bubbles, and we're going to let it sit here and thicken up before we start texturing. Now, while we wait, I wanted to show you the original Down Home Country bar. This was the very first bar that I made. You can see that it's cut on an angle with one of those waffle cutters, and it's sort of textured on top, but there's also like air bubbles in it. And there was supposed to be salt on top, but it all fell off, and I love it so much. It's such a good bar. Now, if you use this fragrance, you'll notice that it does thicken the batter up pretty quickly. So we are ready to texture right now. It's only been about 2 minutes. And I'm using a baby food spoon. This is one of these spoons that you can get from the regular grocery store. It's got silicone on the outside, and it's temperature sensitive, so it turns white if anything is too hot. That bit of it is really not that important for soap making, but I do love that it's covered with silicone because it makes things really nice and easy to clean, and also doesn't react with the soap. Just like its predecessor, we're going to top this one with some sea salt. And a good rule of thumb is to not wait until it's not shiny anymore. You need to definitely top it while it's still wet. And I know that sounds like common sense, but the first soap I made it with salt on top, and I waited too long. It was just not wet enough on the top anymore. Nothing stuck, and so we just had chunks of salt flying all over the place for the first month of using my homemade soap. I spritzed the top with alcohol to prevent soda ash, and we're ready to wait 24 hours and then slice up our soap. Now that it has fully saponified, the weird fleshy soap that I made in the last clip just looks like a weird, slightly less fleshy soap. In the comments below, I would love to know one of two things. First option is tell me about the first soap you ever made, and that's if you're a soap maker, obviously. And the second option is if you're not a soap maker, or even if you are, what's your favorite part of the process? Is it the slicing, like right here, where you get to see what the design looks like for the first time? Or is it mixing the colors? Or is it smelling the soap, or using the soap, or giving it to someone, or selling it to someone? Let me know what your favorite part is down in the comments. Looking at the resulting design, I think I probably should have thickened up my soap a little bit more to create more of a distinction between the two different soap batter colors. You can see quite a bit of swirling, right? But I think that might be a little bit too much. It's crossing over into meat soap territory, and if you're a soap maker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anytime you make a red and white or a pink and white soap and you don't do a distinct swirl, you risk letting it look like, well, like marbled beef or like meat. And nobody wants their soap to look like meat. If you want to pick up one of these bars yourself, you can definitely do so in March when I've released all of my rebooted soaps. And I'm going to be having a sale as well, so if you want to save some money, hang tight until March, and then you can pick some stuff up at my website, nestsoapery.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope that this was informational, or at least enjoyable to watch. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like this content and want to see more, and also leave me a comment below letting me know what your favorite part of soap making is. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you in the next one, and until then, be well.